Sometimes the best response to fear is laughter. Horror comedy exists in that strange place where disgust and amusement share the same room, where something can make you wince and laugh at exactly the same time. It thrives on excess, pushing everything further than it should. More gore, louder colors, stranger monsters, and jokes delivered with complete sincerity. These aren't polished mainstream crowd pleasers with harmless ghosts in the background. These are the films that embrace slime, satire, and total absurdity, turning the bizarre into an art form. Tonight, we're diving into 10 weird horror comedies that help define an era of glorious bad taste and creative madness. From toxic waste nightmares on the Jersey Shore to quiet suburban streets hiding something far more disturbing. These films used humor as both a weapon and a disguise, letting audiences laugh their way through some genuinely uncomfortable ideas.
Rockula, 1990. Every couple of decades, the same love story ends the same way. A young vampire falls for the reincarnation of his lost love, and a peg-legged pirate shows up and ruins everything with a deadly ham bone. That loop has repeated for centuries. This time, in modern Los Angeles, he decides he is done letting fate call the shots. Instead of hiding in the shadows, he tries a new plan. Start a band, get noticed, win her heart, and change the ending before the pirate returns. The movie mixes romance, supernatural comedy, and full musical numbers, building its own strange rulebook and sticking to it with confidence. Dean Cameron plays the vampire lead as earnest and overwhelmed rather than dark and mysterious, which fits the joke-heavy tone. The humor comes from commitment, not sarcasm. Familiar faces pop up along the way, including Tony Basil as his high-energy mother and musician Thomas Dolby in a supporting role tied to the music world. Songs and fantasy sequences drive much of the film, with stage performances, dreamlike cutaways, and joke visuals layered into the numbers. Effects are simple and mostly played for laughs, from light vampire makeup to the running hambone gag. The pirate appears across different time periods in updated costumes, always connected to the same ridiculous weapon. This is musical comedy first, vampire movie second. It is bright, goofy, and proudly offbeat. For anyone who likes genre mashups that swing big and stay playful, it is an easy cult curiosity pick. Waxwork, 1988. A quiet suburb hides a strange attraction, a mysterious wax museum that appears overnight with no warning and no explanation. Inside, the displays are unnervingly lifelike, scenes of horror frozen in time, from werewolves to mummies, to the Marquis de Sade himself. But when a group of curious teenagers accepts an invitation to explore, they discover the truth. Each display is a portal, and stepping past the velvet rope means being swallowed alive by the nightmare. Waxwork is gleefully ambitious, a love letter to horror history that doubles as a wild ride through multiple genres. One moment you're watching a gothic vampire tale, the next you're knee-deep in a swamp with a swamp creature, and before long you're face-to-face with chains and sadistic torment. Every set piece feels like its own mini-movie, with tone and style shifting as the museum's twisted worlds come to life. The film thrives on its creativity. The wax figures are uncanny, the transitions from reality to nightmare are seamless, and the practical effects bring each monster to grisly life. From blood-soaked vampire banquets to clawed werewolf transformations, the visuals have a handmade charm that captures the spirit of horror at its most imaginative. Beneath the spectacle, Waxwork is also a sly commentary on the genre itself. It indulges in clichés with a wink, celebrating horror's familiar tropes while still managing to surprise. The museum acts as a shrine to our collective fears, a place where the old stories never die. They just wait for new victims to step inside. With its mix of humor, gore, and sheer invention, Waxwork has earned its cult reputation as one of the most playful horror films of the 80s. It's a cinematic haunted house where every room hides a new nightmare, and once you enter, you may never leave. Motel Hell, 1980. Farmer Vincent runs a quiet roadside motel and sells popular smoked meats to the surrounding community. The business is thriving, though no one asks too many questions about where the meat comes from. Along with his sister Ida, Vincent captures travelers from the nearby highway and keeps them buried in a hidden garden, alive but silenced, until they're ready to be processed. The routine holds until Vincent saves a young woman from a staged accident and decides he doesn't want her to share the same fate. The film plays its premise with complete seriousness. Rory Calhoun gives a surprisingly restrained performance as Vincent, presenting him as polite, soft-spoken, and unsettlingly sincere. He believes in what he's doing, which makes him more disturbing than a typical villain. Nancy Parsons leans harder into the grotesque as Ida, whose loyalty to family overrides any sense of morality. Paul Linke appears as Vincent's sheriff brother, offering an uneasy contrast to the rest of the family operation. One image defines the film: victims buried up to their necks in the soil, unable to move or call for help. It's simple, uncomfortable, and memorable. The effects are minimal but effective, relying on performance and framing rather than excess gore. Even the more outrageous moments, including the chainsaw-heavy finale, are staged with practical weight that keeps the danger believable. Motel Hell balances horror and dark humor by refusing to undercut itself. The absurdity is never acknowledged on screen, which allows the premise to remain unsettling instead of playful. It's a strange offbeat entry in early 80s horror, quietly nasty, occasionally funny, and built around a villain who feels disturbingly ordinary. TerrorVision, 1986. TerrorVision is a horror comedy film released in 1986, directed by Ted Nicolau. The plot revolves around the Putterman family, who install a new satellite television system that inadvertently receives signals from outer space. This leads to the unintended consequence of an alien monster being transported into their home. As the monster begins to wreak havoc, the film blends slapstick humor with horror elements, creating a unique and campy viewing experience. Notable performances include Diane Franklin as Susie, Garrett Graham as Stan, and Mary Woronov as Raquel, who bring a delightful absurdity to their roles. The film is characterized by its colorful set design, quirky characters, and a distinctive visual style that reflects the 1980s aesthetic. It also features a playful critique of suburban life and media consumption, echoing themes from other cult classics of the era. TerrorVision runs for 85 minutes and has garnered a cult following, currently holding an IMDb rating of 5.5. While it may not have been a commercial success upon release, it has since become a beloved film among fans of B-movie horror and comedy. The film showcases a mix of outrageous special effects and comedic moments, making it a fun watch for those who appreciate campy horror. With its bizarre premise and eccentric characters, TerrorVision remains a memorable entry in the genre, celebrated for its creativity and humor. Hard Rock Zombies, 1985. A struggling rock band heads to a quiet town for a show, not realizing the place is hiding a bizarre secret tied to a reclusive family with roots in World War II extremism. Things turn deadly fast. After the band is killed, their music literally brings them back from the grave. Now undead, they return for revenge and still plan to finish the concert they came to play. Director Krishna Shah pushes the story far past normal horror comedy limits. The cast plays it completely straight, which somehow makes the insanity land even harder. The villains are exaggerated and cartoonish, including an infamous historical dictator figure and companion portrayed as over-the-top caricatures. The movie knows it is outrageous and never tries to ground itself in realism. The effects are low-budget and very obvious, with simple zombie makeup and bright stage blood. There are several full music numbers built around original rock tracks, giving the film the feel of a strange horror musical at times. The tone jumps between goofy, dark, and just plain odd, often within the same scene. This is late-night cult movie territory. It is messy, ridiculous, and unforgettable once seen. Not scary in a traditional sense, not exactly polished comedy either, but consistently entertaining for viewers who enjoy off-the-rails horror experiments. Bad Taste, 1987. Aliens have invaded a small New Zealand town, harvesting humans to supply an intergalactic fast food operation. A four-man government response team is sent in to investigate the disappearance of the local population and eliminate the threat. What follows is non-stop chaos. Exploding heads, chainsaw battles, and extreme gore as the team fights through an alien-infested town that's already far beyond saving. Peter Jackson directs, writes, produces, shoots, and stars in his feature debut, a passion project made over several years on weekends with friends and almost no budget. Jackson and the small cast play multiple roles, leaning hard into slapstick violence and exaggerated performances. Nothing is subtle, and nothing is restrained, but the commitment is absolute. The practical effects are the real attraction. Heads burst apart, brains are eaten, bodies are dismembered with gleeful excess. Every effect was built by hand. Costumes, gore rigs, weapons, and the homemade quality becomes part of the appeal. The violence is constant and cartoonish, closer to Looney Tunes than traditional horror. Despite the limitations, the action is staged with surprising clarity and energy. Bad Taste is crude, juvenile, and relentlessly over the top. It's not polished or sophisticated, but it's a clear statement of intent. Years before his mainstream success, Jackson proved he could turn enthusiasm, creativity, and sheer determination into something wildly entertaining. A cult classic built on passion rather than resources. Class of Nuke High, 1986. A high school sits beside a malfunctioning nuclear power plant, and radioactive waste is seeping into everything, from the water supply to the local drug trade. When contaminated substances circulate through the student body, chaos erupts. Physical mutations, accelerated pregnancies, and violent outbursts turn the school into a disaster zone. Directed by Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Hertz, this is trauma at full volume. The cast embraces exaggerated performances, knowing subtlety isn't the goal. The mutant gang, known as the Cretans, becomes both antagonist and parody, embodying punk excess and radioactive absurdity. The practical effects are gleefully grotesque. Melting faces, exploding bodies, and the infamous mutant infant are created with rubber, slime, and zero restraint. The gore is cartoonish rather than frightening, designed for shock laughs and disbelief. Class of Nuke High is proudly tasteless, stupid, and committed to excess. It isn't trying to critique anything coherently. It's chaos as entertainment. A defining trauma cult classic that delivers radioactive anarchy without apology. Street Trash, 1987. Street Trash is a notorious cult classic directed by J. Michael Muro, blending dark comedy, horror, and body horror in a way that's as outrageous as it is entertaining. Released in 1987, this 91-minute film dives into the gritty underbelly of New York City, where a liquor store owner unknowingly sells a toxic concoction called Tenafly Viper to the local homeless population. The film opens with a shocking premise. When the homeless drink this lethal brew, they don't just get drunk, they melt into colorful goo. The visceral special effects and over-the-top gore create a unique viewing experience that pushes boundaries and challenges the viewer's tolerance for the grotesque. Following the chaos unleashed by the Tenafly Viper, we meet a cast of eccentric characters, including Fred, played by Mike Lackey, and Bronson, portrayed by Vic Noto. Their misadventures unfold against a backdrop of violence, necrophilia, and absurdity, all while maintaining a satirical edge that comments on social issues. Street Trash isn't for the faint of heart. It's a film defined by its unapologetic exploration of taboo subjects and its blend of humor with horror. The script is filled with memorable one-liners and outrageous scenarios, making it a distinctive entry in the realm of independent cinema. Though it may not appeal to everyone, those who appreciate its raw, unfiltered approach often find themselves captivated by its audacity. As a quintessential example of 80s B-horror, Street Trash has garnered a dedicated following for its unique take on the horror comedy genre. If you're looking for a film that's unapologetically bizarre and filled with wild imagination, Street Trash is definitely worth a watch. Parents, 1989. In the pristine, hyper-stylized suburbs of 1950s America, 10-year-old Michael Lamley begins to suspect that his seemingly perfect nuclear family hides a grotesque secret. Plagued by vivid, bloody nightmares, Michael notices that his father's corporate job at a chemical plant coincides with an endless, unsettling supply of large, unidentifiable meat dishes at the dinner table. As his isolation grows, Michael realizes that his parents are not just conformists, but active participants in a deeply disturbing domestic culinary secret. Directed by Bob Balaban, the film is a masterclass in tone, blending pitch-black comedy with surreal psychological horror. The production design is aggressively vibrant, utilizing a manicured retro aesthetic that weaponizes mid-century consumer culture into a source of mounting claustrophobia. Rather than relying on traditional monster tropes, the horror stems from ordinary domesticity, the rhythmic, squelching sound design of carving knives, heavy breathing, and meat sizzling on a backyard grill. Mary Beth Hurt and Randy Quaid give unforgettable performances, projecting a cheerful, robotic normalcy that makes their underlying menace terrifying. Parent stands as an overlooked gem of late 80s cinema, offering a visceral critique of post-war complacency and the forced assimilation of the American dream. It treats the family unit as a cult, where compliance is mandatory and curiosity is dangerous. For the modern viewer, its hypnotic pacing, stark cinematography, and lingering close-ups of domestic life create a deeply uncomfortable atmosphere. It remains an eccentric, deeply subversive nightmare. Frankenhooker, 1990. A medical student loses his fiancée in a freak lawnmower accident. Unable to accept her death, he becomes obsessed with bringing her back to life. When her body proves unusable, he comes up with a new plan. Assemble a replacement using parts from multiple women he encounters on the streets of Times Square. The experiment works, but the result isn't the woman he remembers, and control slips away almost immediately. Rather than focusing on realism, the film leans into absurdity from the start. James Lorenz plays the grieving scientist as unhinged and obsessive, never fully in control of his own ideas. Patty Mullen carries the film as the resurrected Elizabeth, switching between innocence, confusion, and aggressive confidence as the character begins asserting her own identity. The supporting cast adds texture, avoiding caricature, even as the situations grow increasingly ridiculous. The effects are deliberately excessive. Gabe Bartalos's makeup and creature work favors stitched limbs, exposed wiring, and exaggerated transformations. Shooting on location in late 80s Times Square gives the film a grimy backdrop that grounds the chaos in a very specific moment in New York history. Frankenhooker is crude, strange, and unapologetically committed to its concept. Frank Henenlotter treats the premise seriously enough that the humor lands without undercutting the horror. It's exploitation cinema built on practical effects, bad taste, and complete conviction. Never subtle, but always intentional.
Thanks for watching. If you have your own memories of these films or a hidden gem we missed, let us know in the comments below. We're building this collection together, one film at a time. And remember, always be kind and rewind, because every movie is somebody's favorite.